The latest updates from the young and the restless hint at another emotional blow awaiting Victoria Newman, one that may arise not from an external enemy or a corporate rival, but from the painfully familiar pattern of disappointment tied to Nate Hastings, a man with whom she once envisioned a second chance, yet whose unresolved wounds and complicated motivations threaten to turn their renewed connection into a source of fresh turmoil. For Victoria, the past months have already pushed her to the limits of grief and resilience. The loss of Cole Howard, unexpected, devastating, and deeply unfair, fractured something inside her that she had only just begun to rebuild after years of complicated relationships and corporate battles. Cole's return to her life, catalyzed by the shocking discovery of their long-lost daughter Claire, had reignited emotions she believed were buried forever. Their reunion was tender, nostalgic, transformative, a reminder of a softer version of herself that had not existed for many years. And just as that sense of healing began to take shape, death stole Cole away with a cruelty Victoria could barely comprehend. She was left holding memories that felt warm and violent at the same time, reminders not only of love, but of everything she had lost. In the aftermath, Victoria forced herself through the painful process of mourning, choosing not to collapse underneath the weight of tragedy, but to confront it directly. She grieved not only for Cole, but for the life they might have reclaimed together, the second chance that slipped through her fingers before she could fully grasp it. And yet, despite her grief, she pushed herself to keep moving forward, to honor what Cole represented rather than allowing his death to anchor her in despair. Her determination to heal led her to reconnect with someone unexpected, Nate Hastings. Their past relationship had ended in betrayal and disappointment, tainted by ambition, insecurity, and the chaos created by Audra Charles. But time has a curious way of softening sharp edges, and during their recent interactions, Nate and Victoria found themselves speaking with a calmness that surprised them both. The intensity that once fueled their romance had quieted into something contemplative, something resembling genuine friendship. In the months following Cole's death, Nate became a steady presence in Victoria's orbit, a voice she could trust, someone who understood pain and reinvention, someone who wasn't afraid to meet her sadness with honesty. But beneath the early signs of reconnection lies a fundamental fragility, one shaped not only by Victoria's grief, but by Nate's unresolved emotional damage. Nate is still carrying the fallout from his own difficult breakup, and although he tries to present himself as composed, mature, and ready to move forward, emotional bruises remain beneath the surface. His split with Audra was not merely a relationship ending. It was a dismantling of identity, ambition, and pride. Nate poured so much of himself into that partnership, into the professional empire they believed they were building, that its collapse left him disoriented. He is adrift in ways he does not fully acknowledge, and while his closeness to Victoria offers him comfort, it also tempts him with a sense of validation he has not yet earned from within. That imbalance is dangerous. Victoria, still fragile from the loss of Cole, is not in a position to absorb someone else's instability, nor should she be expected to. Her heart may be open to the idea of connection again, but it is still healing, still raw in the places where Cole's memory lingers. She is looking for steadiness, for someone who respects her grief and does not require her to rescue them from their own unresolved pain. Nate, however, is balancing somewhere between vulnerability and ambition, between genuine affection and the remnants of his old need for power and recognition. Even if he cares for Victoria deeply, his emotional foundation is too unstable to support the weight of a rekindled romance. That is the specific reason the reunion feels doomed before it truly begins. Both of them are grieving, but they are grieving in different ways, at different paces, and for different losses. Victoria's grief is rooted in love and memory, while Nate's is rooted in identity and disillusionment. Their pain does not complement, it intersects sharply, unpredictably, threatening to tear open wounds neither of them has fully confronted. This dynamic creates a subtle, unspoken tension beneath their interactions. Victoria may feel a flicker of comfort in Nate's presence, but she cannot ignore the faint warning in her intuition, the sense that he is not yet whole enough to be a safe harbor. She has lived through too many betrayals, from Ashlyn Locke's deception to Billy Abbott's impulsive chaos, to step blindly into a connection lacking emotional clarity. Nate, for his part, may mistake Victoria's strength for readiness, believing she is already standing firmly on the other side of grief. But grief is not linear, and Victoria's healing is still delicate, still susceptible to collapse under the wrong kind of emotional pressure. Nate's unresolved heartbreak could easily pull her backward into patterns she worked hard to escape: the role of the caretaker, the fixer, the woman who pours stability into partners who cannot provide it themselves. She has survived too much to repeat that cycle. Yet the tragedy is that neither Victoria nor Nate intends to hurt the other. Their growing closeness is sincere, even tender at times. They laugh together, share memories, exchange cautious glances that hint at what once existed. There is a warmth between them born from familiarity and mutual respect. But warmth alone cannot sustain a relationship already weighted by grief and uncertainty. And beneath that warmth lies the shadow of what Nate has not yet resolved within himself: doubts, emotional exhaustion, lingering attachment, fear of inadequacy. Victoria, perceptive despite her sorrow, may soon recognize these signs, and when she does, another heartbreak may unfold, not because Nate betrays her in the dramatic fashion of past storylines, but because he is simply not ready to meet her where she needs to be met. For Victoria, the cost of pursuing someone emotionally unavailable would be far too high right now. She is rebuilding herself from the ground up after losing Cole, rediscovering pieces of identity and purpose that grief had momentarily obscured. Nate's presence may soothe her loneliness, but it cannot provide the foundational stability she craves. The tragedy and the poetic symmetry of this situation is that both Victoria and Nate are searching for healing, yet neither is currently capable of offering it to the other. Their individual wounds run too deep, their emotional journeys too separate. Their reunion may spark brief comfort, but long-term happiness would require emotional groundwork neither has completed. And so, while their renewed bond may appear promising on the surface, the undercurrents suggest an inevitable fracture, one rooted not in malice, but in timing, grief, and the fragile complexity of two people still trying to find who they are after losing so much. In the world of Genoa City, where love is often tangled with ambition and redemption, Victoria Newman may soon face yet another painful lesson. Sometimes the people who feel familiar, safe, and comforting are the very ones most capable of breaking your heart simply because they are not whole enough to protect it. Audra Charles remains a presence Nate Hastings cannot simply erase, not because she physically stands between him and Victoria Newman, but because she lingers within him in ways he does not openly admit. She represents unfinished business, unresolved pride, and emotional bruising that has not yet faded into indifference. Audra was never an easy woman to love, nor an easy woman to leave behind. She challenged Nate's ambition, fueled his hunger for influence, and mirrored his darker impulses when he strayed from the principled path he once claimed defined him. Their relationship was built on intensity, strategy, and mutual desire for power, and when it collapsed, it did not end quietly. It shattered under the weight of betrayal and ego, leaving Nate not only heartbroken, but destabilized. Even now, he wrestles privately with feelings he cannot categorize neatly as regret, resentment, longing, or relief. Audra's shadow complicates his emotional availability because part of him is still sorting through what their connection meant about who he is and who he wants to be. That internal struggle makes any new romantic possibility fragile from the start. And yet, viewers of The Young and the Restless can clearly see that Victoria and Nate genuinely enjoy each other's company. There's an ease between them that does not feel forced, a natural rhythm in their conversations that suggests comfort born from shared history rather than convenience. They laugh in ways that feel unguarded. They exchange glances that carry unspoken understanding. Their time together has not been defined by dramatic declarations or impulsive passion, but by something quieter and perhaps more mature recognition that both have endured pain and emerged altered. In each other, they find familiarity and steadiness, two qualities that feel increasingly rare in Genoa City's volatile emotional landscape. This is not the fevered romance of their first chapter. It is more restrained, more reflective, almost cautious. But beneath that caution, attraction hums unmistakably. The chemistry between Nate and Victoria is undeniable. Their proximity carries tension. Their conversations occasionally pause in that charged silence that suggests something waiting to reignite. It would surprise no one if they ultimately decided to revisit their romance. The groundwork exists. The emotional intimacy is rebuilding. The spark has not fully extinguished. And yet the question lingers with uncomfortable persistence: is attraction enough? Chemistry can pull two people back together, but it cannot resolve the underlying fractures that once drove them apart. Both Victoria and Nate must confront the reality that their previous relationship failed for specific reasons, not simply because of outside interference or bad timing. Nate's ambition and susceptibility to influence, particularly under Audra's guidance, revealed a side of him that deeply unsettled Victoria. She saw a man willing to compromise ethics for advancement, willing to align himself with questionable strategies in pursuit of validation. That shift eroded her trust. It created doubt about whether he was someone who could stand independently strong beside her rather than leaning into manipulation or external pressure. Victoria, for her part, is not without fault. Her upbringing under Victor Newman's formidable shadow has shaped her into a woman fiercely loyal to her family, sometimes to the point of moral ambiguity. She has learned to compartmentalize, to protect Newman interests at almost any cost, and to navigate corporate warfare with strategic silence. That instinct resurfaced in a recent and deeply consequential decision. Her choice to remain silent about Victor's involvement in the deception surrounding Lily Winters and the calculated maneuvering against Kane Ashby. Rather than being transparent with Nate about Victor's manipulation, she chose loyalty to her father over honesty with the man who once claimed to want her trust. This decision may prove to be the clearest indicator that their reunion, however emotionally compelling, is structurally unsound. Silence can be louder than betrayal. Victoria's choice not to disclose Victor's role reveals that when forced to choose between family allegiance and romantic transparency, she defaults to the former. It is an ingrained reflex, one that has defined her for years. She may justify it internally as protecting her father, protecting Newman Enterprises, protecting a larger strategy she believes necessary, but from Nate's perspective, it echoes the same mistrust that fractured them before. He has struggled to assert independence, to carve out a moral identity separate from influence and manipulation. Discovering that Victoria withheld information about Victor's scheme would not simply anger him, it would confirm his deepest insecurity that he is not fully inside her circle of trust, not fully prioritized when conflicts arise. And for a man still wrestling with self-worth after Audra, that confirmation could cut deeply. The tragedy of Victoria and Nate's dynamic lies in the subtlety of its flaws. There is no dramatic explosion, no immediate betrayal unfolding in front of them. Instead, there is a quiet misalignment of values and loyalties simmering beneath otherwise tender interactions. They are drawn to each other, comforted by each other, and perhaps even hopeful about rediscovering something meaningful. But attraction and shared grief cannot override foundational incompatibilities. Victoria's instinct to protect Victor, even at the expense of transparency, suggests she has not fundamentally changed in the ways Nate would require to feel secure. Meanwhile, Nate's unresolved emotions regarding Audra and his ongoing identity reconstruction suggest he is not fully prepared to engage in a relationship requiring deep trust and unwavering honesty. Both may attempt to convince themselves that they have matured past their former mistakes. Both may believe that time and pain have reshaped them enough to succeed where they once failed. But growth requires not only awareness, but behavioral change. If Victoria continues to shield Victor's questionable actions, if she continues to compartmentalize truth for strategic advantage, she risks recreating the same dynamic that once alienated Nate. And if Nate remains emotionally entangled in the residue of Audra, if he seeks validation in Victoria's admiration rather than confronting his own insecurities, he risks repeating his own patterns of instability. Their reunion may appear promising in the immediate future. It may even blossom into something briefly fulfilling. But beneath the surface, the warning signs are already present. Victoria's silence about Victor's deception is not a minor detail, it is a symbolic fracture line. It demonstrates where her ultimate loyalty resides and how easily she can justify withholding truth when family power is involved. For Nate, who is striving to redefine himself as principled and independent, such secrecy could feel like regression, an echo of the manipulative environments he claims to want to escape. In the end, the potential heartbreak awaiting Victoria may not come from a dramatic betrayal or a shocking twist. It may emerge from something quieter, but equally painful, the realization that despite mutual attraction and genuine affection, they are still fundamentally misaligned in ways that matter most. Victoria may once again find herself standing at the intersection of love and loyalty, forced to choose. Forced to confront whether she can ever fully separate her romantic life from the gravitational pull of Victor Newman. And if she cannot, then no matter how strong the chemistry with Nate, no matter how enjoyable their time together, Their reunion may be destined not for triumph, but for another slow unraveling, one rooted not in lack of feeling, but in the persistent, complicated truths neither of them has fully confronted.